All right, taking a look here at 3 different swings from Arden. Compare the swing in the upper left. Comparing the swing in the upper left to the swing in the bottom left. And one thing that Arden tends to fight is a little bit too much head traveling during the swing. And you can see here at the starting point, we have them sink to heel plant. And so, and if we take them back to their farthest point back in the swing, in other words, the load, you can see how much Arden in the upper left really kind of starts swaying and the head gets taller. Whereas in the bottom left, the head doesn't fully get out of the box. We still have, you know, a little bit of his face in it. So there's no question that the swing in the upper left, he travels more as he goes. So, you know, and I think it really happens here. There's just a little bit more of a kind of a downward forward move of the head, whereas in the bottom left, I think there's a little bit more of an intent for the head to stay back. And I think that's very important in terms of being, you know, consistent with contact. We want to drive hard with that back leg, but we want to minimize head travel. So we want to, you know, maximum leg drive, but maximum tilt and keep the head back behind it, okay? So I just think that's an example in the upper left of head movement that is going to really affect consistency, and it's going to make timing more difficult. So we don't want the head to travel that much. All right, so we'll go ahead and go through the swing systematically, okay? Back leg, front side, back arm, and again, Arden, you try to just keep working for perfection in all 3 of them, okay? So like we talked about with the back leg, again, you know, you keep that back leg pretty straight, and you can see how that in the upper left, it causes you really kind of get kind of high and on top of that thing. You know, you might want to try to create a little bit of flexion in that knee and keep it inside of the front leg when you load up. But the leg does unload. There's very good unloading there, okay? And so your back leg does what it has to do in the sense that it loads and it drives and it unloads. But I think you need to set up with that head, you know, with a little bit more of a goal of keeping your head back, and set that up in your stance. And try not to feel like, see in this upper left, I feel like you really get on top of that back foot. And I think that's just going to create some timing issues. So, and again, if you're killing the ball, I'd leave it alone. But if you're looking for an area of improvement, I would try to set up in your stance that, hey, you know, my head is back. You know, in my stance, my front wall is already set up. And we had a lesson. Remember the lesson we had when we were all about the front wall, and you setting up your wall, and that, you know, your wall is set, and all you're going to do is drive against that front wall, okay? So I would do a little bit better job of setting up in my stance with, you know, the intention of keeping my head back and the intention that I'm going to really stay behind that wall, okay? So even though the leg's unloading well, it's doing what it's got to do, it's loading and it's unloading, I think the setup and the intent of what you're trying to do could be better. So let's go ahead and move to the front side. And again, that's what that front side is a wall to hit behind. You can see how, you know, Adrian really keeps his front side square. Your front foot opens a bit more, which can be fine, which can be okay. And when you swing, you kind of start open, okay, which is fine. And then we close down. Adrian starts open, so that's similar. I'm not so much as concerned about, you know, the foot being open as much as I still feel like this knee may be getting a little bit on top of the foot. Just make sure that knee stays well behind the foot, and we set up maybe a better wall to hit against and hit behind. I'd like to see, you know, at this point maybe a little bit more. You can really see Adrian, you know, tilting the shoulders, tilting the spine here earlier, and you're a little bit more straight up and down there. So again, I go back to that lesson we had where we really focused on that setting up that front wall and really getting behind that front wall. Okay, with the last thing, the back arm. Okay, you're after a perfect throw with that back arm. Okay, and so when we get here, I think your setup with your hands is a little higher than it needs to be. You know, 2 things that does. Well, number one, it takes it away from a natural throwing action where we're, you know, coming from more of the center line of the body, and the hands stay, you know, about, you know, maybe a little bit above nipple height, where now they're up higher. Plus, that takes the hands farther away from the hitting zone. Okay, so you might want to try to really focus on the throwing aspect of those hands. And then so once you land, you know, you've got your hands up by your ear. He's got his hands, you know, slightly below shoulder height. and he really makes a good down move at the ball, as I feel like you kind of flatten and go around a little bit, okay? Again, I give the arm action overall, you know, a good solid A-. I think it's a really good, you know, I like it a lot. And, you know, you've got good, you know, there's good rotator cuff activity there. The elbow slots in, okay, and the bat stays pretty stacked, but it's not as stacked as his is, okay? So you might be able to make an improvement by putting it a little bit more down to the throwing action, okay? As we get to contact, I love the way you finish. You know, the back arm is close to finishing in contact, and that's what we want. And you have great, you know, hand action on most of these. You know, Adrian might be beating you over the top there with the rollover, but most of these, your hands are working pretty good, okay? Adrian's chest stays on the ball maybe a little bit better there, okay? So again, we can always work on more tilt and less turn through it, okay? So the main thing is set the wall up, and try to minimize the head movement, you know, during that unloading of the back leg, okay? And I would try to lower the hands, make it more throw-like, and shorten the path to the ball.